Now we get to the vision in Daniel chapter 7. Uh, a reason for going over 2 is before getting to 7 is Daniel 2 gives us the framework and the methodology for interpreting Daniel 7. And Daniel 7, the reason for going over this is it gives us a lot of the framework that we need for understanding the Islamic prophecies in Revelation 9. And you'll see how all this fits together in a little while. Daniel 7 goes, In the first year of King Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon the bed. And then he wrote the dream and told some of the matters. Daniel spoke and said, I saw my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven drove upon the great sea, and four great beasts came up out of the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld that the wings thereof were plucked, and was lifted up from the earth, and made to stand upon his feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And I beheld another beast, second like a bear, and it raised itself up on one side, and it had three ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And they said unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had on its back four wings of a fowl. And the beast also had four heads, and dominion was given to it. And after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and had great iron teeth, and devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and had 10 horns. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit. His garments was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels like as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him, and thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. And I beheld to the voice of the great words which the horn, and beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, even till the beast was slain, and its body was destroyed, and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. There was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all the people and nations and languages should serve him. And his dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Daniel was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and then the visions of my head troubled me. And I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me, and made known to me the interpretation of the things. These great beasts which are four kingdoms which shall arise out of the earth, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom, and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Now in Daniel 2 there is a statue of 4 metals and feet of iron and clay. Daniel 2 explained that the 4 metals were 4 empires, starting with Babylon. There should be then there would be a different period symbolized by the iron and clay. In Daniel 7 we see 4 beasts that the angel explains are 4 kingdoms, followed by a period dominated by the little horn. And of course, the little horn comes out of the fourth beast. Let's establish that these symbols adequately fit Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, and a period after Rome. The lion. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. It was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. The winged lion was commonly used in Babylonian art as a good symbol of Babylon, and is a good symbol of Babylon. The rest of the verse seems to hail back to an incident when Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 4. And it's a very good description of, which is a transcript of Nebuchadnezzar's letter. If you want to read about that, look it up in Daniel chapter 4. It's a fascinating story and very much worth reading. The bear. And beheld another beast, second like to a bear, and it raised itself up on one side, and had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. Now the bear is an animal of tremendous strength, like the Persians. When the Persians first rose to power, it was through joining of the Medes with the Persian forces. Over time, the Persians became dominant, just as the bear raised up on one side. And there were three uh, main powers that Persia conquered: Babylon, Lydia, and Egypt. Moreover, the bear had 3 ribs in its mouth. Now the leopard. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had on the back of it 4 wings of a fowl, and the beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Now a leopard is extremely fast by itself. Add to that the 4 wings, and the kingdom that comes up with incredible speed. Alexander the Great set up a vast Grecian empire in just a few short years. The leopard has 4 heads, and Alexander's empire was divided upon his death. He was asked to whom he left his kingdom, since he had no obvious heir. This was an urgent question. To the strongest, he replied. He also declared his last recorded words that all his foremost friends should hold a great funeral contest over him. Alexander's empire didn't pass to his family. Instead, his generals set up their own kingdoms and fought for several decades for control. Now, by 276 BC, the Antigonid, Seleucid, and Ptolemaic dynasties were firmly established, and the foundations had been laid for the Attila dynasty, so the 4 main dynasties that came from Alexander's empire. And so we see that the first 3 beasts do correspond with the Babylon, Persia, and Greece, and so we can say that the 4th beast should symbolize Rome. Now, Daniel, it continues. Then I will know the truth of the 4th beast, which is diverse from all the others. Exceeding dreadful, his teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped with residue in his feet. And of the 10 horns which were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even from that horn that had eyes and a mouth, and spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them, until the ancient days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. And then he said, The 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. And another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and dividing a time. Now we come to the 4th beast. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and had great iron teeth, and devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped residue with its feet, and was diverse from all the beasts which were before it, and had 10 horns. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Just a review on when it originally came up. Daniel was especially interested in the 4th beast and the horns that would rise up out of the 4th beast. And the 10 horns of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, which shall be diverse from the first. He shall subdue 3 kings. Now the Roman Empire was not conquered by one superpower, but was slowly conquered and divided by a series of invasions. Arguably, this is focusing on the Western empires. The Eastern Empire survived another 1,000 years, but was destroyed in the events in Revelation 9. Now the rise of the little horn. Another horn that was diverse from the first. The first 10 horns were political powers, but this horn is different. One of its identifiers is that it subdued 3 other kingdoms. Here I'll begin to argue that the little horn represents the Catholic Christian power and its associates. Now, of course, when the last Roman emperor was deposed, the territory that had been the Western Roman Empire was then controlled by a number of barbarian powers, about 10 powers altogether. That's why you got the 10 horns. So, about this new horn, the one that comes up. There are many tribes that came and went over the centuries. If the Catholic Church is the little horn, then we would expect to see 3 tribes removed after the end of the Western Roman Empire. In other words, after the last emperor is deposed. Because it's only after the emperor is deposed you can establish that there are a number of tribes that control the territories of the former Western Empire. Those are the ones that exist at the beginning of these are the ones that would correspond to the 10 horns, not any ones that came before or ones that came after. And this little horn has to pluck up 3 of the horns that came up out of the 4th beast. So it has to be after the fall of the last Western Roman after the deposition of the last emperor of the West. Anyways, then we would expect to see the Catholic rise to dominance, the rise to supremacy, aided by the utter destruction of 3 of these kingdoms. The classic historicist interpretation of this is that the 3 horns represent the Heruli, the Vandals, and Ostrogoths. This has been heavily criticized as historically inaccurate. Unfortunately, this is fairly easy to do since the interpretation is often presented by those that present the historicist interpretation in an oversimplified way that does paint a picture inaccurate. It does paint a somewhat inaccurate picture of the complicated historic events. However, I do feel that the basic principles of this interpretation is correct, and here I'll try to present a more nuanced understanding of the historic events that explains why these events do fulfill the prophecy, why we see that the destruction of these 3 kingdoms did aid in the rise of the rise of Catholicism, which is a different power. The others were political. Catholicism is religious, which is why in the vision it's described as being diverse from the others. The last of the Western Roman emperors was Romulus Augustus. He was deposed in 476 by Odoacer. Odoacer was the son of Edico, the king of the Sciri. After the destruction of the Sciri kingdom, Odoacer moved into Roman territory where he signed up with the Roman army. The Roman army of Italy was dominated by barbarians, which included Sciri, obviously, along with Heruli, Alans, and Torcellingi. Odoacer became the head of the army of Italy. He secured the favor of the barbarian followers by settling them in Italy. He then deposed Romulus Augustus and set himself up as king of Italy. Now, the army of Italy consisted of barbarians from various tribes, but for the sake of this study, we need to remember that the Heruli were among his primary supporters. World Encyclopedia describes Odoacer this way: chief of the Germanic Heruli, people and conqueror of the Western Roman Empire. The Heruli were Roman mercenaries until 476 when they declared Odoacer king of Italy. And this is the way the encyclopedia describes it because the Heruli were among his main supporters. Odoacer was generally tolerant of religion and did not interfere with the Catholic Church's affairs. However, he was an Arian, someone who believes that God brought Jesus into existence and denies the Trinity, as were his Heruli supporters. The Catholic Church was Trinitarian. However tolerant he may have been towards the Catholic Church, an Arian king was a hindrance to Catholic or Trinitarian domination over Europe. This is evidenced by the Catholic Church's statement that the mystery of the Trinity is the central doctrine of the Catholic faith. Upon it are based all of the teachings of the Church. Odoacer betrayed the Eastern Roman Emperor, who sent the Ostrogoth leader Theodoric to remove him. Theodoric killed Odoacer in 493 and settled his fellow Ostrogoths in Italy. The Heruli kingdom, the main supporters of Odoacer, received its death blow in 508. Edward Gibbon describes it this way: the assassination of a royal guest was executed in the presence and by the command of the king's daughter, who had been provoked by some words of insult, and disappointed by his diminutive stature. And a tribute, the price of blood, was imposed on the Lombards by his brother, the king of the Heruli. Adversity revived a sense of moderation and justice, and insolence of conquest was chastised by the signal defeat and irreparable dispersion of the Heruli, who were seated in the southern province of Poland. Another historian writes, Lombard power increased in two perceptible stages. In 508, first of all, their forces crushed the Heruli. As I mentioned before, the Heruli were Arians. The Lombards at this time were actually Arians themselves. However, they later converted to Catholicism, later converted to Trinitarianism. The death of Odoacer and the destruction of his Arian Heruli supporters seat of power marks the uprooting of the first of the three kingdoms, whose fall aided the Catholic Church's Trinitarian dominance over Europe. The Vandals were another Arian people who had captured the city of Carthage in 439 and ruled Tunisia and eastern Algeria. They even captured Rome in 455 and stripped it of much of its wealth. This is the origin of the term vandalism. They persecuted many of the Catholics in Africa until the ascension of Therasamund, who ended the persecutions. This favorable policy was continued after Hilderic became king. Hilderic acted very favorably towards the Catholics and stopped their persecution and established good relations with the Eastern Roman Emperor. He was overthrown by his cousin Gelimer. This prompted the Eastern Roman Emperor Justinian to send his general Belisarius to conquer the Vandals. This brought Tunisia and Algeria back to full Catholic Orthodox Trinitarian control. He succeeded in defeating the Vandals and expelling them from Carthage. One historian put it this way. The Vandal kingdom was thereby ended. 95 years after Gaithric's capture of Carthage, the Vandal kingdom had fallen, and Carthage in North Africa were once more Roman. Procopius estimated that there were about 80,000 Vandal men in North Africa at the time of Belisarius, and that almost all were killed in the war. While this is undoubtedly an exaggeration, it is certain that the Vandal nation was crushed and there would be no rebellions, as there were too few to fight. For the Roman Empire, the defeat of the Vandal kingdom was a victory of strategic importance. The campaign was swift, and in just a few months North Africa had been taken without any damage to speak of and few losses. The enormous treasure of the Vandal kingdom was sent to Constantinople to finance its coming operations against the Ostrogoths. With North Africa secure, an assault on Sicily and the Ostrogothic kingdom of Italy was now possible. The threat to the Vandal fleet was gone, and the campaign in Italy could be supplied from North Africa and Sardinia without troubles. Now the surviving Vandals went separate ways and soon ceased to exist as a distinct people. In 533, Justinian incorporated into his legal code a set of letters between the imperial court and Pope John II. I almost said the wrong name. And Pope John II, stating that, among other things, this see, the See of Rome, where the Pope resided, is indeed the head of all churches, as the rules of the fathers and decrees of the emperors assert, and the words of your most holy, of your most reverend piety testify. So, within the legal code that Justinian put into place, was part of that legal code was what was made up that legal code was a letter from the Pope to the Roman Emperor, which declared that the See of Rome, where the Pope ruled, was the head of all churches. Now this gave the Pope the legal status of the head of all churches, because the Roman Emperor incorporated this letter into its legal code. But Rome was still under Arian political control. So this law was, in this point, is more symbolic. It will gain its full effect 5 years later. Belisarius began his campaign against the Ostrogoths in 535. He captured the city of Rome and deposed Pope Silverius, who had been elected Pope through Ostrogoth influence, and who died soon after. In 537, the imperially backed Vigilius was installed as Pope by Belisarius. One historian records the treachery with which Vigilius ascended the papal throne this way. A letter was now discovered allegedly linking Pope Silverius to a plot to restore the city to the Goths, forged by Julianus Praetorius and Marcus a Scholasticus. The letter was given to Belisarius, who ordered that Silverius be sent to Lycia. On 29th of March, Viligius was ordained as the new pope, allegedly by the order of Theodora, which is the empress. Justinian later ordered that Silverius be returned to Italy pending an investigation. Belisarius surrendered him to the custody of Vigilius, whose men starved him to death. Vigilius is said to have promised to give Belisarius 200 pounds of gold for his support. It is not the only hint of scandal linked to Belisarius during the siege. The Ostrogoths laid siege to Rome, trying to recapture Rome from 537 until 538, when they were finally driven away from Rome. Now, the war continued between the Eastern Roman imperial forces and the Ostrogoths until 554, but they also were killed and scattered and ceased to exist as a distinct people. Now, with the death of Silverius, so there's no question about Vigilius's right to be pope because his opponent was dead, and the withdrawal of the Ostrogoths from Rome in 538, Vigilius was free to exercise his authority as the head of all churches. This firmly established the Catholic faith as the imperially backed official religion of the city of Rome, with the dominant faith in the lands that had once made up the Western Roman Empire. Thus, the Catholic Church does fulfill the little horns identifying marks as a power before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. It became a major political power after the demise of the Roman Empire, and the 3 kingdoms suffered their mortal blows in the process. The blasphemies of the little horn. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until times and dividing a time. Now Daniel says that the little horn would wear out the saints of the Most High. Thus we can conclude there would be a persecuting power. Here's what the Catholic Church has said on that subject in its own words. The Catholic Church loudly proclaims that she has a horror of blood. Nevertheless, when confronted by heresy, she has recourse to force, to corporal punishment, to torture. She creates tribunals like those of the Inquisition, encourages a crusade or religious war. Especially did she act in the 16th century with regard to the Protestants. She lit in Italy, in the Low Countries, and above all Spain, the funeral pyres of the Inquisition. In France and in England, she tortured the heretics, whilst both in France and Germany, she encouraged and actively aided the religious wars. No one will deny that we have here a great scandal to our contemporaries. Indeed, even among our friends and our brothers, we find those who dare not to look at this problem in the face. They ask permission from the Church to ignore or even deny all these acts and institutions in the past which have made orthodoxy compulsory. Now, one of the key identifying points is that the little horn power would think to change times and laws. Now, this is what the Catholic Church says about changing the laws of God. This is from the Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine. It's a series of questions and answers. And the question is, what is the Sabbath day? Answer is, Saturday is the Sabbath day. Question, why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer, we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church, in the Council of Laodicea, transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. And in Plain Talk About Protestantism Today, Monsieur Louis Segura wrote, it was the Catholic Church which, by the authority of Jesus Christ, has transferred this rest to Sunday in remembrance of the resurrection of our Lord. Thus, the observance of Sunday by Protestants is an homage they pay, in spite of themselves, to the authority of the Catholic Church. We can see that the Catholic Church has claimed that through its power, it has changed the law of God. The next key identifier is that it will be given into his hand until times, and the dividing of time. Here's one of the key time prophecies in the Bible, and it links Daniel and Revelation. Here are the other passages. Now, this times, and dividing time. How else is it referenced? In Revelation 12, verses 1 through 6 and 14, I'm not going to read all the verses, but it goes down in verse 6. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,203 score days. And in verse 14 refers to this same time period. And to the woman were given 2 wings of great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness unto her place, where she is nourished for times, and half a time. So we see there that in the Bible prophecies, that times, and half a time is the same as 1,260 days. Notice that verse 14 is a restatement of verse 6, where the one flees into the wilderness is fed by God. That's why we know that these are equivalent. Let's look at other verses. In Revelation 11, chapter 11, verses 1 through 3. There was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court that is without the temple leave out, measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. And the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. And I'll give a power unto my witnesses, that they shall prophesy 1,203 score days, clothed in sackcloth. So we see here, 42 months, 1,260 days, and times, and half a time are all equivalent time periods. They're all the same. Through these passages, we see that the times, and half a time, 42 months, and 1,260 days are simply different ways of referring to the same time periods. We can see how the time period converts perfectly if you understand we aren't dealing with solar years, but rather prophetic time. 42 30-day months comes to 1,260 days. A time, one prophetic year of 360 days, times 2 years, 720 days, and half a time, 180 days, comes to 1,260 days, or 42 months. And 360-day prophetic year comes from the fact of 12 30-day months. 12 exactly 30-day months. This is all symbolic, not talking about the way our solar calendars work. Here's some other passages that talk about events during the same period. In chapter 12, verses 6 to 7. And one said to the men clothed in linen that was upon the rivers of water, How long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen that was upon the rivers of water, when he held up his right hand unto heaven, and sware by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a times and a half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the people of the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. In Revelation 13, 1 through 9, talking about another prophecy about the same time period. And I stood upon the sands of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, and having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon its horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and its feet were like a bear, and its mouth the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. You recognize those animals? It's alluding to the same animals we saw in Daniel chapter 7. And I saw one of the heads that was wounded unto death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Oh, and by the way, if you look back in Revelation chapter 12, it says that that it explicitly states that the dragon is Satan. And there was given unto him a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, same things we saw in the little horn, Daniel 7. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months, the same time period. And he opened up his mouth and blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given to him to make war with the saints, same thing the little horn, Daniel 7 does, to overcome them. And power was given over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. His names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear to hear, let him hear. This last passage most clearly makes the connection between the beast and the little horn in Daniel 7. It is given power of the same length of time. It opens mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and tabernacle, and them that dwell on the earth. It is given to him to make war with the saints and overcome them. His power is given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. This perfectly parallels what the little horn does in Daniel 7:21. And I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them, in Daniel 7:25. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints against saints of the Most High. This beast also is like a leopard, and its feet of a bear and mouth of a lion. We see here the repetition of the animals of Daniel 7. This simply provides a new aspect of the fourth beast, Rome, in Daniel 7. Rome copied the Greek civilization, which was an extent often used, which to such an extent that we often use the phrase Greco-Roman today. In that way, it's like Greece. Greece also copied things from Persia, which copied things from Babylon. How should we interpret the 1260 days? What does this mean in reality? Protestant theologians historically used the day-year principle in interpreting the apocalyptic time prophecies for centuries, although it's fallen out of favor in many churches today. There are several very good scripturally based reasons for adopting this interpretation. One verse is Ezekiel 4, chapter 4, verses 4 through 6. Lie thou upon thy left side, lay the iniquity of the house of Israel upon it. According to the number of days thou shalt lie upon it, thou shalt bear their iniquity. For I have laid upon thee the years of their iniquity, according to the number of the days, 390 days. And thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Israel. And when thou hast accomplished them, lie again on thy right side, and thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. I have accomplished thee each day for a year. In this passage, the prophet Ezekiel himself acts as a symbol. He lies on one side, one day for each of the literal years that he symbolizes. Jesus used the day for year principle when predicting the 3 years remaining in his ministry until his triumphal entry into Jerusalem and his final week there. Luke 13. The same day there came certain of the Pharisees, saying unto him, Get thee out, and depart hence, for Herod will kill thee. And he said unto them, Go ye and tell that fox, Behold, I cast out devils, and I do cures today and tomorrow, and the third day I shall be perfected. Nevertheless, I must walk today and tomorrow and the following day, just as said today and tomorrow and the third day. For it cannot be that a prophet perish out of Jerusalem. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which killest the prophets and stonest those that were sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together as a hen doth gather a brood on her wings, and ye would not. Behold, your house shall be left desolate, and verily I say unto you, ye shall not see me until the time come when ye shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. The book of Revelation begins with special messages to the 7 churches, which are often understood to symbolize different periods that Jesus' followers will go through. One of these messages contains a brief time prophecy, Revelation chapter 2, verse 10. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee eternal life. Christians suffered a number of persecutions under pagan Rome. The most severe was the systematic persecution begun under the Emperor Diocletian in 303. The persecution ended in 313 with the Edict of Milan issued by the Emperor Constantine I, who later converted to Christianity. Thus, the worst, most widespread, and systematic persecution of Christians by Rome lasted for 10 years. This matches the 10 days of persecution that Jesus warned the church about. From clues such as these, scholars have taken this principle and tried applying it to the time prophecies, and it's consistently worked, whenever applied to a highly symbolic time prophecies. Now, there are also more literal time prophecies, such as the 70-year prophecy of Jeremiah, where it doesn't apply because he doesn't use the symbolic language in there. He's very straightforward and literal. Remember I said that it was important that the defeat of 3 tribes helped solidify the Catholic Church's position of power over Western Europe, and the last of them was defeated in 538 AD. If this is the beginning of a 1260-year time prophecy, then we should see the Catholic Church's power broken in 1798 AD. In 1798, Napoleon had one of his generals imprison the Pope. This dealt a very serious blow to the power of the Catholic Church. It has since recovered much of its influence, but it took many years for that to happen. Now we can see that mainstream Christianity, namely the Catholic Church, perfectly fulfilled all the identifying marks of the little horn power. Now we come to the point of Daniel 7. It says that the little horn power would speak great words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. It made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Furthermore, in its horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and mouth speaking great things. Revelation 13 elaborates on this when it says, And there was given into him a mouth, speaking great things, and blasphemies and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. And then a little bit later in verse 18 it says, Here's wisdom, let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666, or 666. And Revelation 14 talks more about the beast, and says, And the third angel followed him, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast in his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke in their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast in his image, and whoever receiveth the mark of his name. Now, I'm not writing this as an attack on all Christians, even all Catholics. It's only meant to inform you what the Bible prophesied, that the medieval Christian church would become corrupt, blaspheme against God and his law, and attack the true followers of God. If you want to be certain that you are not part of that, you must use Scripture as the foundation of your faith rather than the traditions of the church. And of course, anyone that follows the true teachings of Jesus, this is not applied to. It's talking about the established church, the mainstream church. It's not talking about the true followers of Jesus, those that truly follow Jesus' teachings. Now, if you remember from Daniel chapter 2, that the feet of iron and clay, it says that it's that the fourth kingdom, the Iron Kingdom, was divided. It's a continuation of the Iron Kingdom in a different form. The same thing is with the little horn here. While the little horn is a new power in the sense that it's different from Rome, it comes up out of Rome. It's a continuation of the Roman power. This is emphasized even more in the prophecies in Daniel chapter 8 and 9. We'll get into that another time. But one of the things that needs to be understood here is that the medieval Christian church is a continuation of the Roman Empire in a different form. One preeminent church historian from the turn of the 19th century wrote this: In the West, no division into patriarchates came about, but on the other hand, something else happened. In the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire perished of internal weaknesses and through the inroads of the barbarians. What was left what was Roman took refuge in the Roman Church, civilization, law, Orthodox faith, as opposed to the Arian. Now remember, the Arian is the anti-Trinitarian. Arians don't believe in the Trinity. The barbarian chiefs, however, did not venture to set themselves up as Roman emperors and enter the vacant shrine of Imperium. They founded empires of their own in the provinces. In these circumstances, the Bishop of Rome appeared as the guardian of the past and the shield of the future. All other provinces occupied by the barbarians, even those which had previously maintained a defiant independence in the face of Rome, bishops and laity looked to him. Whatever Roman elements of barbarians and Arians left standing in the provinces, and they were not few, were ecclesiasticized, and at the same time put under the protection of the Bishop of Rome, who was the chief person there after the emperor's disappearance. But in Rome, the episcopal throne was occupied in the 5th century by men who understood the signs of the times and utilized them to the full. The Roman Church in this way privily pushed itself into the place of the Roman world empire, of which it is the actual continuation. The empire has not perished, but has only undergone a transformation. If we assert, and mean the assertion to hold good even of the present time, that the Roman Church is the old Roman Empire consecrated by the gospel, that is no mere clever remark, but the recognition of the true state of the matter historically, and the most appropriate and fruitful way of describing the character of the Church. It still governs the nations. The popes, like Trajan and Marcus Aurelius, Peter and Paul, have taken the place of Romulus and Remus. The bishops and archbishops of the proconsuls, the troops of priests and monks correspond to the legions, the Jesuits to the imperial bodyguard. The continued influence of the old empire and its institutions may be traced in detail down to the individual legal ordinances, nay, even in the very clothes. There is no church like the evangelical communities or the national churches of the East. It is a political creation and as imposing as a world empire because of the continuation of the Roman Empire. The Pope, who calls himself King and Pontifex Maximus, is Caesar's successor. The Church, which as early as the 3rd or 4th century was entirely filled with the Roman spirit, has reestablished itself as the Roman Empire. Has reestablished in itself the Roman Empire. Nor have patriotic Catholics in Rome and Italy in every century from the 7th through the 8th onwards understood the matter otherwise. When Gregory the Seventh entered upon the struggle with the imperial power, this is the way in which the Italian prelate fired his hour. Seize the first apostle's sword, Peter's glowing sword, and smite. Scatter far the savage horde, break their wild impetuous might. Let them feel the yoke of yore, let them bear it evermore. What is blood in Marius' day, Marius and his soldiers brave, or in Julius's mighty sway, Romans did their land to save. Thou canst do by simple word great the Church's holy sword. Rome made great made again by thee, offers all thy meed of praise. Not for Scipio's victory did louder paeans raise, nor entwine the laurel crown for a deed of more renown. Who is it that this thus addresses? A bishop or Caesar? A Caesar, I imagine. It was to be felt so then, and it is still felt to be so today. It is an empire that has that this priestly Caesar rules, and to attack it with the armament of dogmatic polemics alone is to beat the air. I cannot here show what immense results follow from the fact that the Catholic Church is the Roman Empire. Let me mention only a few conclusions which the Church itself draws. It is just as essential to this Church to exercise governmental power as to proclaim the gospel. The phrase Christus vincit, Christus regnat, Christus triumphant must be understood in a political sense. He rules on earth by the fact that this Rome-directed Church rules, and rules too by law and force. That is to say, it employs all the means of which states avail themselves. Accordingly, it recognizes no form of religious fervor which does not first of all submit to this papal church. It is approved by it and remains in constant dependence on it. This church then teaches its subjects to say, though I understand all mysteries, and though I have all faith, and though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, and have not unity and love, which alone floweth from unconditional obedience to the church, it profiteth me nothing. Outside the pale of the church, all faith, all love, all virtues, even martyrdoms, are of no value whatever. Naturally, for even an earthly state apprentices only those services which a man has rendered to its state. But here the state identifies itself with the kingdom of heaven, in other respects proceeding just like other states. From this fact you can yourselves deduce all the Church's claims. They follow without difficulty. Even the most exorbitant demand appears quite natural as soon as you only admit the truth of the two leading propositions. The Roman Church is the kingdom of God, and the Church must govern like an earthly state. It is not to be denied that Christian motives have also had a hand in this development. The desire to bring the Christian religion into real connection with life and to make its influence felt in every situation that may arise, as well as anxiety for the salvation of individuals and nations. How many earnest Catholic Christians have there been who had no other real desire than to establish Christ's rule on earth and to build up his kingdom? But while there can be no doubt that their intention and the energy with which they put their hands to work made them superior to the Greeks, there can be little that it is serious misunderstanding of Christ and the Apostles' injunctions to aim at establishing and building up the kingdom of God by political means. The only forces which this kingdom knows are religious and moral forces, and it rests on the basis of freedom. But when a church comes forward with the claims of an earthly state, it is bound to make use of all means at the disposal of that state, including, therefore, crafty diplomacy and force. For the earthly state, even a state governed by law, must on occasion become a state that acts contrary to to law. The course of development which this church has followed as an earthly state was then bound to logically be the absolute monarchy of the Pope and his infallibility. For in an earthly theocracy, infallibility means at bottom nothing more than full sovereignty means in a secular state. That the Church has not shrunk from drawing this last conclusion is a proof of the extent to which the sacred sacrament has become secularized. And this was it's actually a transcript from a speech given by Adolf von Harnack, that preeminent church historian, and this is taken from his book, What is Christianity? Now, you'll probably look at this and say, this doesn't sound like what we hear in the news today. And that's a subject to go into it. I'll get into it in one of the other prophetic videos. But one of the prophecies was that the church would receive a blow, which it did in 1798, and it would basically come back into power. It has gone through. The Catholic Church kind of ended up shrinking into the background enough that by the mid 20th century, people had forgotten really what it was like before. And it is coming back into influence now. You can start, but it's coming into influence through very inconspicuous means. But you can see where it is becoming influential in world politics. For example, historically, the fall of the Berlin Wall. One of the key players in those events, in the fall of communism, was Pope John Paul II. He is historically attributed as one of the key players in that. That's just one example of how the Catholic Church is coming back into world politics again. But Americans have forgotten what it was like before. If you want a really good in-depth examination into this, pick up Fox's Book of Martyrs someday. It was very common reading in Protestant circles before, but almost no one really reads it now. But read that sometime, and you'll see what the Catholic Church was like at the height of its power. In Daniel chapter 7, it continues. But judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, the little horn's dominion, to consume and to destroy unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cognitions much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. Now let's review a little bit about what the vision said earlier about the establishment of God's kingdom. I'm going to go Daniel chapter 7, verses 9 through 14, and verse 18 and 22. And I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool, and his throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spoke, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient Days, and they brought him near before him, and there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all nations and people and nations and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. But the saints of the Most High should, and in 18 it says, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and even forever and ever. And in verse 22 it says, until the Ancient Days came and judgments given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Now, verses 9 through 14 give a very interesting sequence of events. Verses 9 through 10, the throne of the Ancient of Days set up, books open, and the judgment commences. Verses 11 through 12, the beast is slain and dominion taken away from other beasts. Verses 13 through 14, Son of Man comes to Ancient of Days in the clouds of heaven. Son of Man is given dominion and an everlasting kingdom. There are two very important things most people fail to notice here. First, the judgment begins before the beasts have their dominions taken away. There is a judgment before the end of the earthly kingdoms. That's indicated by Daniel chapter 7 here. Now, I'll cover that elsewhere when discussing Daniel 8 and 9. Second, the Son of Man is not the Ancient of Days. The Son of Man is a separate, lesser being who receives power from the Ancient of Days. Now, if you want to go into that, my materials on the Trinity go into this topic in depth. But that's the end of Daniel chapter 7, and check out some of the other materials.